finally.
I've
I
never
wasn't,
done a
yeah,
live, so I was like, all right, we should pop up.
yeah, because I'm like, I was talking for like 5 minutes. I'm like, well, pleasure's mine, Marie. Pleasure's all mine. I was mentioning right before I jumped on here was we started following each other from FTP, from Full Time Purpose, from the Full Time Purpose. And I'm blessed to have met you. I've met a couple other people on there, just like you were mentioning stuff about our spiritual awakening. And I want to thank you, first of all, for helping me out and shifting my timeline, sister, because I think you mentioned that somewhere else in your post, which is like, meeting people and saying yes, taking that action, because what you do now is gonna affect our future outcomes. So, with all further ado, of course, to my sister Marie, the alchemist, the healer, and she's been doing this journey for not quite sure, man, but please take over if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I've been pretty much on this journey for probably, it's been about 2.5 years. It'll be 3 years like coming up in September. And I just had like a really traumatic event in my life that sparked this shift in me. And it came from being in an abusive marriage and knowing that if I didn't change something, who I was, like my essence was gonna die. And I didn't want
Yes.
that. So I had this talk in the mirror and this talk with Creator, and was just, I fully surrendered in that moment and was just realizing that I couldn't do it on my own because I was trying and it wasn't working. So I just got to this point where I'm like, whoever's listening, whatever is out there,
Yes.
God, Creator, Spirit Guide, my mom's passed, so I asked her for help. I'm like, whoever's listening, like, I cannot do this on my own, and please help me out of this because I don't want to die while I'm still alive. And that's what was happening. Like, everything I was just dying, like, slowly,
Yeah.
methodically, just
A
being picked
spiritual awakening.
apart. Yeah.
Going through the dark
So
night of the soul.
so I had I had this catastrophe happen in my life that allowed for me and my kids to separate from that situation in a safe way, and in a way that like all eyes were on everything. And once I realized that, the power of surrender, I never looked back, because I understood at that point that whatever I truly wanted in life, I just had to ask and then wait, right? Like,
Yes,
take
yes, yes,
mind
yes, yes,
action,
yes.
but like just wait, like be still, because how you think something is going to play out is you're only able to imagine up to your perception level, right? But
Yes.
if you let the universe take care of it, if you let Creator take care of it, you end up realizing that there are infinite possibilities out there, and your mind can't even comprehend the magic that can happen if you just allow it. So really,
Yes.
I had to like get out of my own way. And then that just started
Mm,
this
mm.
journey of like trauma healing and
Trauma.
getting back into my body and reclaiming my voice and reclaiming my body and reclaiming my purpose, you know, having to go through all these initiations over like the last 2.5 years. So it's just been like one transmission after another, like boom, 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 boom. They just kept building on each other. And a lot of my journey was on my own,
Mm.
just me and Creator. And then I started meeting my tribe and started meeting certain people that were able to hold me and
Yes.
support me in a way that I had never been held or supported. But I
Yes.
had to allow that,
Yeah.
like I had to be open to that and willing to speak my truth and tell my story. And a lot of that was having to let go of my idea of who I was and who I thought I
Yes.
was.
You're hitting so many key points, sister, that I do want to break it down at least from the beginning. So it sounds like you got the calling. You got the calling. This was the I call it the Great Awakening, or I believe a lot of us, a lot of starseeds, a lot of healers, alchemists were called, meaning through trauma to be isolated. You were isolated by yourself. You were more or less like myself, forced to go within, to
Mm-hmm.
start taking accountability for your action. That's another key point that you mentioned was you took accountability for your actions, for what part you played in the matrix. And that's something that was big in my own journey as well, which is to take accountability for what role, and not just what role, but what else am I allowing? What am I allowing, and not to mention, and that journey, just like yourself, it's like, because my thing is like, I know we all get the calling, sister, but a lot of us choose, I guess, not to do the healing, right?
Yeah.
And what is it?
The work isn't easy.
It's not easy, and that's one thing that I do want to push a little bit more, because a lot of spiritual or consciousness or conscious people who talk about, you know, um, leveling up, they really don't talk about this part, which is, I call it the trenches. This is the trenches. This is not the good part. This is not the love and light namaste. This is the part that you're going to meet your shadow.
Yeah.
This is the part that you need to integrate. Love yourself. Define self-love. Love yourself completely. Because in this process of doing this, this is, as I'm understanding, your source, you're activating your pineal gland. It's pretty much what it is. Like, to sum it up, and what I've realized, like, detoxing, not just the physical body, but those around you. You have to
Mm-hmm.
let go of what's no longer serving you.
Yep.
What are you going to, not just like have boundaries, but enforce your boundaries? You mean, what are you going to allow, what you're not going to allow, and hold true to yourself? Because if you start lying to yourself, because that's really what you're doing, is lying to yourself. This is okay. They're going to change. We start accepting things like, no, dude, they're not going to change. Not everyone is going to level up to this. And the more you let go of stuff, as I'm realizing, I'm going to meet people like yourself, sister. I'm going to meet other like-minded individuals. It's weird how it happens. Like I said, I don't know why I was called to you, but I was. I'm like, I could have, but I'm like, you know what? No, man. I seen your calling. I see, like, she's persistent. She's going at it, and she doesn't give a fuck. Like, meaning that's a big part of the journey. It really is. It's a
Yeah.
big part of the journey is not to give a fuck. Fuck what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Because we start to, like I said, I could continue. So I'm just trying to break down everything that you're saying, because I know I'm just diving into it real quick,
Yeah.
but that's a big part of the journey, is taking accountability for your actions, for your behavior.
Yeah.
That's where the alchemy, and that's where the real, true healing is going to start at. Is with yourself. Because what is it? A lot of us get into that victim mentality, and we stay there. It's okay to be there. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to hold your own. But in that time of pain, and that time of darkness, because that's what it is. Just like you're mentioning you're going through the dark night of the soul. Like, now, my question to you then is, did you understand that you were going through a dark night of the soul? Did you see that you were, or just something that you picked up later on, or like, how did you know?
So for me, I've always had a pretty intuitive
Mm.
um connection. Whether I like rode with it or denied it was depending on what was going on in my life. But at this particular moment, I got signs along the way that confirmed to me that that's what was happening, that this was something I had to go through to cleanse myself.
Wow.
So I was lucky in that sense. Like, I have a really strong connection with my mom, who's passed away. And I know when I see the number 26 that it's her. So I know if I'm going through something or something's coming up and I see that number, that's my confirmation. So when all this shit show happened, like, in my life, that just like forced me to make moves, I kept seeing 26, 26. It would come out, it might change on a receipt. It would be on
Mm.
a license plate as I was driving. It was all these things. And
Synchronicities.
so I knew, right? Because I I've always listened. Okay, no. I always hear my intuition. I
Okay,
don't always
okay,
listen.
okay. Thank you for being
Let me
thank you for
rephrase
being
that.
open. Thank you for being open and vulnerable, sister. That's
Yeah.
one thing. Thank you. Thank you
No,
for being that. Yes.
that, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
that's like, that is the truth. Yes, I hear it, but do I always listen? No, because I would second guess it. Or my mind, my ego is telling me I know better, right? Like, so don't believe that or whatever, right? We all play our own little mind games. But at that time, I knew that it was a deep healing that had to be done. And I also understand that that's how I learn. So everybody
Mm.
learns different. Some people can learn by a little nudge or a little push. Like me, I fucking need fire. Like I have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
feel it.
No,
And I
believe
get
me. Yeah,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Enough pain, enough hurt, man, you're gonna wake up. Enough pain
Yeah.
and enough hurt, you're gonna wake up, and that's that. So in other words, you've always been somewhat spiritual then.
Hmm. Yeah. And
You've
I
always
got
had that in you.
that from my mom. My mom was very much like that growing up. Like, you don't do something because someone in a white
Mm,
coat
mm,
told you
mm.
to. You don't have to believe
You're blessed,
everything a
sister.
teacher says. And my mom was like, you question everything. If someone
Wow,
tells you
wow.
something and
Those
it
are
feels
codes,
weird,
man. Yeah.
yeah, she's like, if it doesn't feel right in your body, she's like, you can question it. And she used to laugh because she's like, this drove my parents fucking crazy because they would tell me something and I would be like, well, why? Why do I have to do that? Why does it have to be this way?
Question
What
everything.
if I want to do this? So that was a beautiful blessing in my life to
Yes.
have her. And then I learned about meditation and yoga like through her. So after she passed, it was like the seeds were already planted. So when
Mm.
that came about, it was just like, oh shit, it's already there. You just have to water it now. And
Yes.
that's what I did, and it was little by little, but I also understood what it was to surrender and to pay attention, right? Because a book doesn't come across your path by mistake. A podcast, a YouTube video, like whatever it is, those things are divinely placed in your path. So if you are willing and open to receive, then you can get these messages. And
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
what ends up happening is people miss those because they're not open to it, or
They're not in tune. They're not
yeah,
here. They're not
yeah.
present. And when you're not, that's to add on to that, you are 100% right. Because I was in that, I was not blessed like yourself, should I say, to have that guidance. Because a lot of us don't have guidance. Like that's why I mentioned, like, if you're anything like me or grew up anything like me, which is, in a narcissistic family, narcissistic home, my mom was more of a borderline, like borderline-ish. So very toxic, but, one thing I've learned in my journey is to love them for how they are. They did the best they can
Mhm.
under their own trauma because, for all I know, her, which is my grandparents, how they taught them. And that's one thing that I'm learning. Trauma is passed on through generations, through your bloodline.
Mhm.
These programs that we get, the way that the stuff that we start picking up, thinking that it's okay. And as we grow up, subconsciously, we start looking for it. We look for that dopamine hit because that's really what it is. It's just
Yeah.
a form of love. Like you think this is love, but it's not love. It's what you think it's love, but it's not love.
Mhm.
So it was just so, so you're fortunate, sister, to have your mother as a guide. And I know she is. I can feel it. I can sense it. And growing up like myself, like I'm saying, you grew up very empathic or an empath or like me, like as in my awakening, I woke up thinking like, am I the narcissist? Like, am I the toxic one? And I was, yes, that's what they were, but they were just a reflection of myself. And they were
Mhm.
there just bringing up my trauma, my wounds. And I was in that victim mentality. I was blaming others. But then I came to the realization is like, you're the only one who's going to save you. No one's going to come and save you. I am blessed in the sense of like, I don't have any like religious roots because that's a whole other conversation we can have. But, that limits you as well. That it will help you. It's a form or a path to enlightenment, But there's many other ways to this path of enlightenment or to understanding self. Because at the end of it, that's what it's about. It's understanding who you are, your true self. Because the way I grew up, like I'm saying, like, I tend to mirror people a lot. And I'm like, why am I mirroring people a lot? And you mentioned that in one of your posts, like wearing the mask. And you
Mm-hmm.
realize this is just a way of how I deflect which is now known as narcissistic defenses, or being passive aggressive. Because I asked, like, why am I passing judgment? I'm like, well, because, and that's when I started to learn about the whole observer. Like, I was never spiritual, like, at all. Like, at least I thought I was. I'm like, I'm not religious. I'm like, no, man, that is two totally different things. And
Totally
that's what,
different.
yes,
Yeah.
and that's when you start to realize, I'm like, okay, because I'm like, well, what is God? You go into that rabbit hole of what really is God, or because it's like, it's not man, it's not human, it's not, it's, or we've been lied to. If you ask me, we had been lied to, for centuries with religion. Meaning, religion is what caps us, is what limits us. Why? Because you are outsourcing your light, you're outsourcing your divinity, your essence to something outside of ourselves, instead of looking within. Because at the end of it, you are your own healer. As I'm still learning, sister, but not to go off topic, but and I'm just blessed, sister, to have been able to understand this. And the only way is that I was to find it was through trauma, man, through that pain, through that hurt, and understanding that you have shadows. We have our own weaknesses, our own childhood wounds that we need to look at. If you want to ascend to the next level, you want to level up, and if you want to be able to see people for what they are, not for what's supposed to be like, you need to start with you. You need to start to understand yourself. Because the deeper you understand yourself, the more you tend to understand. I would see, like, you tend to see others and accept them for who they are, like I was mentioning earlier to you, sister. And but another question that I do want to ask you, because you mentioned you went through a toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were mentioning with your husband.
Yeah.
Was it like a, if you don't mind me asking, like a narcissistic type of
Oh
relationship?
yeah.
Or was,
Like the worst kind. Like the kind that'll lie, cheat, steal, kill. Like the worst kind. And I didn't even fully understand what that was until afterwards, because I was always such a strong personality and very solid in who I was, and like you couldn't tell me nothing. Like in the
yeah.
sense that like I knew who I was, and I'm like, you can't tell me I can't do something. Like I had like this bright light, this bright spirit. I'm very fire. Like that's just me. That's who I am. And getting into this relationship, it was like this methodical
Mm,
breakdown,
mm.
right? To where when I
Narcissist. You
got
were
to
with a
this
narcissist.
point, I was like, how the fuck did I get here? Like, how did I allow this to happen? But I realized that there was these little agreements along the way, and these little happenings right along the way that I made excuses for, that I
Yes.
kind of brushed under the rug, that I was kind of like, and really that's what it boiled down to. Oh, this happened because he was drinking, or this happened because he has his own trauma. But I had this idea that I'm built for this, right? Like I'm built to handle
I
pain.
got
I
this.
have
Yes,
an
yes, yes.
exceptionally high pain tolerance, emotionally and physically. But just because I can doesn't mean that I should, or doesn't mean
Mm,
that I have to. And I had to realize like I was sacrificing all these parts of myself for
yes.
someone else who wasn't even willing to look at themselves or change, or do any of those things. So I was in this relationship where it was sexual and mental abuse. Like, the
Wow. Wow.
thing. And it was, when I look at it now, like that 4 years seemed like so long. It seemed like so much of my life was gone, right? But as I started like my healing journey, I just realized like it was all to teach me. And
Yes. Yes.
that was a
Yes.
hard perception shift in the beginning, because you want to be like, why would I ask for that? Why would I ask to be raped? Like,
Wow, sister.
hundreds of
Wow. Wow.
times. Why would I ask to be compromised in so many ways? But what it taught me was like, as deep as I could go with that, I could go the opposite, and I could stand and reclaim my power and get that back. And a lot of times when I have shared my story, like in bigger groups or things like that, and talking about that, what ends up giving people like this power is the way I can talk about it, like without shame. And
Wow.
I think like that is what stifles people's growth, is they hold the shame of it, because it's
Yes.
like, oh, I was raped, I was this and I was that, and it's me, it's my fault, I allowed this, I did this, and yes, I went through that shame, because I had to face my family and be like, oh, I missed out on this child's birth, I missed out on this graduation, I missed out on this birthday because I was in this fucked up
Mm.
relationship. But I had to like release that and be like, you know what? I needed that to learn. And what did it teach me? I had no fucking self-worth, very low self-worth, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm
Yes.
so confident, I'm so this. No, I wasn't. I felt like, I had to suffer for someone to love me. And that was
Yes.
probably like the biggest takeaway for me, was like, why do I feel like I have to suffer for someone to love me? Or why do I
Yes.
have
No.
to suffer through someone's abuse to prove my love? And I'm like, this is uh a fucked up agreement that I
It's a
have. And I
dynamic.
had
It's
to
just a
own
dynamic.
that.
Yes.
And that's what it took. Me asking those questions, right? Like being consciously curious.
Yes.
Why? Why did I accept this? Why did I make this
Keep
agreement? Why
asking
did I allow
questions.
this? Yeah. And once I started asking those questions, then it was like, oh, okay. It was because I thought like this would teach him what love was. Okay, well, why did you think like that would teach him? It's like, oh, because you're sacrificing and you're forgiving and you're this and you're that. And I'm like, no, that's not what
Now,
that
sister,
was.
one thing I'm going to mention right now. Wow, you are a transmuter of darkness,
Mhm.
sister. You truly are an alchemist, an earth angel. And I feel it. I sense it. Um, you were able to recognize like what lesson is it here to teach
Mhm.
me, and that's one thing I want to point out, especially to people who are hearing us, is what story are you telling yourself? Like,
Mhm.
I understand stuff happens. I understand we have to grieve. I understand that there's stuff that we have to point out. It's like, just want to share a little quickly, like, because I didn't understand what was happening to me in the same thing in my relationship. Like, I didn't realize, like, dude, like, you're being what do you call gaslit? You're being gaslit. I didn't know what a
Yeah.
narcissist was. I didn't know what an empath was. So like in that discovery of finding what that was is the realization to like, why am I accepting this? Why am I giving myself up? And that's like the biggest thing that you mentioned that gave me that aha moment was asking questions. You might not get the answer right there and then, but in when you're crying or when you're meditating or praying or asking for help to the universe, to your guides, to whatever it is, but at that moment you feel by yourself. But understand that that is happening. You chose that before you came here. Like that's one biggest thing that I had. Like, why would someone choose this? Well, only the bravest souls choose
Yeah.
these type of lives. Like, oh, why would somebody be born not speaking? Or maybe they had to show that family or that self. Like, you don't need to speak to show love. And
Mhm.
sometimes, yes, like that is one of the best teachers is experience, man. And if you don't learn your lesson then it's gonna fucking manifest again. If you
Yeah.
repress it, if you shove it down, it's gonna come up again. It might
Yeah.
not be with that relationship, it's gonna be at work, it's gonna be somewhere else. And it's like, and say that you are blessed, say that you do receive things, then and if you're not vibing with that, then it's gonna go away. You're gonna lose it because it's not vibing with you. But the biggest thing that you mentioned, sister, that I really want to make clear is you learn your worth, your
Mm.
self worth. What value do you bring? Because what I found when you're with a narcissist or a toxic person, they're a virus. they inflict themselves. Like they literally, they get into you to accept things that you wouldn't accept. And the next
Mm-hmm.
thing you know, it's a month, 3 months, it's a year, it's a loop, it's a deep toxic cycle. So
Yeah.
once you recognize that you are with that person or that disconnect, like it's as hard as it is. Oh, I have to start a new life. You have to.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you're
Yeah.
going to. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to go through it. Might as well suffer with justice. Suffer the right way. Like transmute that darkness into what is that? Like use that as a catalyst to your awakening. And
Yep.
that's the thing a lot of us don't understand and recognize, that like you're going through an awakening. The universe right now is, because that's what you're vibing. That's what you're focused on. That's what you're fixated on. If you're fixating on fixing someone else, you're going to forget about yourself in the process.
Oh
You're going
yeah.
to lose yourself in the
Yeah.
process. Like that's kind of like one thing, like, because I went the dark way, sister. Like I literally went the dark way. I went, which I would not recommend anybody now, of course, which is like, because if you are, go ahead and knock yourself out. But understand this, make sure to dig two graves, theirs and yours too,
Oh
because you're going
yeah.
to go down with them, meaning, oh, I need to teach them a lesson. The best revenge is focus on you.
Yeah.
Do you live your best life? That is the best revenge for anything. And in that process of understanding that, you're going to find yourself. You're going to start to ask the right questions, because now that energy and that trauma, because that's what they did, that narcissist or that toxic person or relationship that you're in or anyone's in, it's there to teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
Can you recognize a lesson? Can you discern what it's trying to show you? And a lot of the times, I'll tell you right now, you don't love yourself. You are lacking it. And that's what they're there to teach you.
Yeah.
That's what they're there to show you. Be by yourself. It's okay. It's okay to be by yourself. That was like one of the biggest lessons, is like, you don't need nobody else, man. You are the only one who's going to get yourself. And to touch on right now, that's coming to me on what you said, it's like, what we're focusing on is going to manifest. It's going to come to be. So what are you paying attention to? Not just that, how are you speaking to yourself? Because
Mm.
in that process, as you escape that toxic relationship, you're embedded, man. That you just got some of their virus, like not just their virus, but your own. It brought up your
Oh
triggers,
yeah.
your stuff. Now, are you gonna see them? Are you gonna work on it, or are you just gonna ignore it? Excuse my language. Go fuck it away, or sleep it away, or like
Yeah.
because that's kind of what we do. Is like we go back in. I call it the Matrix. Because you had an awakening. The universe just hits you. Like, hey, your soul's calling you. There you go. Your soul is calling you now. And that's the thing. Is like, because we're living through a false identity. We're living through the false ego. That whole Bruce Lipton talks about this. We're programmed from 0 to 7 with all these programs. Of just negative self-doubt. Negative. It depends how you grow up. It all depends
Yeah.
how you grow up. Like myself, man, like I mentioned to you earlier, I'm from the ghetto, dude. I'm from the projects. I toxic family, narcissistic family. So I grew up like maladaptive, maladaptive. But the difference is, I never lost my inner child. I never. It's always, my imagination's always been there, and always to give and always to love. But in that process with another toxic person, they're gonna reflect your dark traits.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you have to recognize the pattern. You have to recognize what's no longer serving your soul, your purpose. And what is it now? What decisions you're making now that are going to affect your future outcome? And you mentioned that earlier when we were talking about that there is many possibilities. There is. There's an infinite amount of possibilities. But what choices are you making today? And that's what I'm saying. You taking my call, sister, you taking my offer of like, hey, let's jump on here. We're shifting timelines right now. What I'm sharing with you, what you're sharing with me, we're sharing to other people. It's gonna get out there, And by us sharing, you're activating codes, and I'm blessed that you're helping myself and others shift their timeline, sister. You are a huge blessing. Sometimes we do forget though, because I forget, you know, because it's those old programming that come
Yeah.
back. Those old programmings come back, or that inner critic. But I want to touch on this one because I know you're a very, very expert on this one. Conscious breathing. Like,
Mm.
I don't want, I want to stress that, like, what a game changer conscious breathing has been to not just mine, but to your development. Before I pass it on to you, like, what helped me is like what I've realized is it helps bring you present because, like, I'm ADHD, I'm usually all over the place, mostly here, focused on the future, I'm in anxiety, dwelling in the past and the stories that we tell ourselves. And that's the thing is like, it helps change that story. Why? Because you're bringing awareness now. You're bringing awareness to that trauma or to whatever's holding you back. So in breath, you can get, and I say you get lost, meaning you find your higher self. It's that connection because it's that moment where you're like, your body thinks it's dying. Your
Mm-hmm.
body literally thinks it's, dying. So those thoughts are going to come in, observe them, don't judge them or just let them go. Release them. Be the observer. Just observe them with no judgment. That's the key. If you can observe it with no judgment, just don't entertain them because they're not even your thoughts, by the way. But
Yeah.
that's why it's helped me, like the game changer, Wim Hof, pranayama, alkaline breathing, somatic was just another one I just tried, and I realized, dude, like thought I was over the trauma. I got this. I'm already fine. And, dude, I just did a session with with the whole FTP with
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah.
When he was doing it, and when his wife got on, started singing, oh, my tears started coming. Like, oh no, your body keeps count, man.
Oh yeah.
Trauma's in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to release that trauma. And this is how you get to the levels, not saying that we're better, sister, but to the levels of healing. Because that's the
Right.
difference between many, us and others. We're taking the time to heal. We're taking the time to do the inner work, to understand thyself, who you are, your true self, your authentic self, your God source, your God power. But with that said, sister, I know you do conscious breathing, right? You do
Yeah.
ceremony with
So
cacao as
yeah.
well?
So I do cacao ceremonies, and that's a little bit different. I bring breath work into everything that I do. I will just start that off like right off the bat. It doesn't matter what ceremony I'm doing, what workshop I'm doing. There is a little bit of breath work in there to bring you present because
Yes.
most people don't realize like most of the time we are in fight or flight all the time and not even fully breathing because we are overstimulated all the time by your phone, by your kids, by your work, by your spouse, by your parents, by whatever, right? So all the time we're like, holy fuck, what is happening? And your tone is like that. So then you don't even realize that you are not even responding to life. You are just reacting. Something happens, you react.
Yes.
This happens, you react. But when you can tune into your breath and tone your nervous system, then you can move through life in respond mode
Yes.
versus
Mm.
react. And what's wild to me is I didn't even realize like I was in that tone until I started paying attention to my breath. And then I was like, oh shit, like man, I feel chill all the time.
It's a
And
natural
I was
high.
like, at
It's a
first I
natural
was like,
high.
yeah, I was like, what is this feeling? Because most of the time I was like, overstimulated with everything. And, oh, I got to do this. I got to make money. I got to take care of my kids. I got to do this, blah, 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 blah. And it's like always running. But when I started paying attention to my breath, then I'd be like, oh, you can calm down. And then when you're in that relaxed state, it allows you to
Mm.
observe. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you to be present. And then it
Yes.
allows you to make moves from there. And that's what people miss. And then most people like, you could go, what, a couple days, maybe a couple weeks without water. You could go a couple days, couple weeks without food, and you would still be alive, right? You wouldn't feel the best, but you'd
Yes.
be
Yes.
alive. Try going without breathing for a minute and see
No.
how that
Yeah.
works out for you. But nobody pays attention to that.
They take it for granted.
And yeah, Tria's right. She said you got to cultivate your own peace, right? It's a lifelong practice, and that's it, is that it's creating a ritual, a practice within yourself to be present, to be conscious, and to be curious. Like, be curious. We are here to learn. We are here in this life to learn, to evolve. So you got to, one, observe, and two, you got to be present, and you just got to be curious, ask the questions, and dive into that, you know? But what breath work has also taught me is that just by changing a pattern, just by doing it for a certain amount of time, just by increasing a breath hold, like, you can have an energetic orgasm. You
Yes,
can
yes.
have this deep connection to God. You could be transported to a whole nother dimension. And I like try to explain that to people. I'm like, you don't understand the things
Yes.
that you can do with your breath. And it's so amazing because it's free and you literally do it every single day. So it's like, when you learn your true power and what you can do with like intention, it is life changing. And for me, that's what changed my life, was being present and being curious, and then learning how to use the gifts that I was given to
There you go.
apply to life, right? Because we are all given these gifts, and there's nothing special about me that makes it to where, you know, I can have this spiritual fucking visual journey on a during breath work. You know, that doesn't stop anybody else from doing that. And I've learned that even in my practice. I've done cacao ceremonies for like complete skeptics. Like,
What is that? What
I don't even
exactly?
know.
What kind of? What is? Can you dive into that a little bit?
So cacao is basically pure chocolate.
Okay.
So cacao, in ceremonial cacao, is unprocessed chocolate. So it is the purest form, but it's actually a plant medicine. So it
Do you
carries the
smoke it
energy of
or
a,
snort
no, you
it?
drink
Drink
it.
it.
Yes. So you drink it. So it's almost like a hot chocolate, but it's minus the milk,
Okay.
minus the sugar, minus the marshmallows, minus all the bullshit that, you know, the world has put into it, to almost, and I I'm gonna say this like in a way,
Go
just
ahead. Go ahead.
feel me out, right? It's like any plant medicine the world tries to turn into something non-magic,
Demonic.
right?
Yeah, demonic or
Yeah.
evil or some
Yes,
sort. Yes.
exactly. Or, you know, because even like tobacco, that is a plant medicine. There is power there. But when you throw it in a cigarette and you add all these chemicals and add all this, you're stripping the power. Like, tobacco is such a beautiful plant. And even like in indigenous cultures, like, you give tobacco as a blessing, you know, like, you can go on a hike, you take tobacco with you, you bless it, you thank the earth for her beauty, for her support, for all this, and you bless her with tobacco. Like, it's a beautiful
Offering. It's an
blessing. But
offering, like an offering.
yeah, and it's turned into something else, right? And then, you know, you take cacao, which is a heart opening medicine, which helps your blood flow increase. It calls in this unconditional love. It calls in this warmth around you. But hey, let's like slap some milk in it and some sugar and some bullshit, and then just like
Turn it into
you
poison.
strip it. Yeah, you strip it. So, you know, that's, so anyway, so cacao, when I use it in ceremony, or when it's used in ceremony, you can use it as a powerful healing modality. So when I do my ceremonies, it's drinking in that intention. What are you trying to call in? I walk you through a visualization that helps you heal a shadow time in your life. Maybe a time that you needed love, you needed support, you needed protection, you needed to be heard, you
Yes.
needed your voice, whatever it is. Walk you through that. And then it ends with like this beautiful self-forgiveness ritual, but it opens you up to feeling love, like,
Gotcha.
but real love, unconditional love, that love that you don't have to fight for, that you
Well,
don't
it
have
comes from
to
within.
beg
It's that.
for.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
and
coming
then
from here.
once you feel that and you know that it's innately yours and no one can take it from you, that is empowering. And that's what
And
those
that you're creating it.
ceremonies.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
are making that. It's not. Yes.
Yep. So you're waking that up inside of you, because everything you need is already inside of you. But we, you know, our life path takes us through different situations, different traumas, different agreements that, you know, we push those things down. And then that's what's that's for me is like the beautiful part is that unraveling, right? Because you end up unraveling all these traumas. You end up
Mm-hmm.
unraveling all these agreements that maybe you made because your parent told you you were stupid, or a teacher told you couldn't do something, or a spouse told you no one would ever love you the way that they love you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we make these agreements throughout our life, and then we never unpack them. We never unravel them, but we believe them in our body. So when you use your breath or something like cacao, or there's other plant medicines out there, when you use those, it removes that veil so that you can see your truth.
Yes.
And once you
Yes.
see your truth, you can't unknow what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. So unless
Because
you
you're
take
unconscious
that
still. Mm-hmm.
step, yeah.
And one thing that I do want to point out to the people who are listening or are going to listen is to see how my sister Mari here, um, how her perspective of how she's seeing things. That's like one of the biggest things that people have to recognize. Like, oh, I want to be like this, or how do I get there? But it's because your perspective. It's the way you're seeing it, and
Mm-hmm.
the way you're seeing this plant medicine. You're setting the intention. You're setting the right intentions at least. So yes, sister, and I wanted to point that out because a lot of us don't have that perspective that you have, and but to go back to everything again, it starts with self, and there's many different modalities. The way what you're sharing, breath, cacao. There's magic mushrooms. There's tai chi. There's yoga. There's different ways of how to become present.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I do want to add on to the conscious breathing is what it also helps, what it does, it enhances and induces meditation. Because, me having that ADHD, I can't really sit still without thinking about the next thing or whatever is going on around me. It's like when you're in that breath or in that alkaline breathing, pranayama, whatever it is, you tend to be there. You're activating, you're sparking because our pineal gland, from what I understand, has crystals, magnetite crystals all around it. So when you're holding your breath and when you're pushing or creating that force, your spark is like those two quartz crystals. You're sparking it. It's like a little spark, and that's your spiritual antenna. That's why taking care of what you do eat, what you are consuming. Brushing your teeth with fluoride, the water, like because believe me, I'm guilty of practically half of that stuff, but I'm becoming conscious of it, but not
Mm-hmm.
just conscious of it. I'm becoming aware of the effects that it has. So going back to what you were saying of like everything is being demonized, everything is being, for that very reason. They don't want you to know this. Who's they? Well, the people who want to keep you asleep, which
Mm-hmm.
I call the oligarchs, the matrix they call it, the whatever you want to call it. They are the people who don't want you to understand this,
They
to
don't want you
know
to know
the
your power.
your magic. You said earlier, you're magic.
Mm-hmm.
How powerful being that you are. We are powerful beings, but we've lost this with our, like I said, not just the society, but our parents play a big role. Our environment plays a big role. But once you're able to escape that victim mentality, because that's the biggest key, escaping that victim mentality, because you can't jump to level 24 or whatever to the next level without taking care of self. You come first because you're pouring into others. How can you channel? How can you touch source? They'll be there. They're gonna guide you. But what you're wanting to manifest, the reality that you deserve, the only way is it's gonna start with yourself, like with you, and that's kind of like the whole far side, choosing the reality. Because this is what I learned through Billy Carson, which is my mentor. Is there's many opportunities. There's infinite possibilities. And what these Anunnaki, they had this device where they were able to see all the outcomes. So they were able to choose what reality by taking action, which is conscious thought, backed by action. Because knowledge is one thing. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but the thing is, are you applying it? Are you taking action? And this is where like the whole you're filling your soul. Because if you feel stuck, if like I feel stuck all the time. was because you stopped taking action. Where am I going with this? I have no idea. But my brain just took me somewhere else. So I'm like, what's the point,
Wherever
Johnny? You just
source
saying,
is taking you.
yeah. I'm like, what am I talking about? But the point of my Charlie sister is, yes, man, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do a live with you, because I want to show other people that it is possible, man. It's
Mm-hmm.
very possible. It's just you're gonna go through it. You're gonna have that hurdle. Life is gonna come at you. But how are you attacking that problem, that situation? Are you still in that victim mentality? Oh my God, look what's happening to me. People are still attacking me. Why are they treating me like that? First of all, take accountability.
Mm-hmm.
What can you control and what can you not control? And the stuff that you cannot control, I guarantee it, it's like it's outside of you. Let it go. Stop, because the ego one, that's like another one that I've learned. Learn what the ego is. Like, learn your ego. Learn how you operate. Why am I acting like this? And that's a whole healing trauma there. That's a whole inner child there. And like I said, the better you get to know yourself, the better you're able to help others and see others. And you're, in other words, because me, I have a pronounced dark side, as you can see. But the thing is, I love that part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I'm going to be able to relate with other people who that someone else cannot. And it's not like, and that's what I was trying to tell you earlier. It's as you awaken, one of the biggest things you're going to realize is that you did not love yourself, and it's okay. That's where the whole reparenting comes in, loving yourself. And like I said, sister, you were blessed to have a mother to have taught you some of the bare necessities. Because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't I learned that was a big one, which was like question everything. Like that was a life lesson for me. This is something that was given to you, which or a gift, like a gift that was already activating your DNA. And these codes, these superpowers, I call them superpowers because it's in us. And the more you activate yourself, your DNA, heal your wounds through breath, through trauma, whatever it is, you're gonna get to know that you are that divine light. You are that spark. And many people will not agree with me who are religious when I say, but you are a fractal of God. You are a
Mm-hmm.
fractal of light. And it is our divine birthright to seek that light, to go for that light, because that's what it's about. That's what the healing journey is about, is getting to know thyself. What that's what I'm understanding. Because sometimes I do ask, like, why am I doing this? But that's when I realized, like, no, man, you got away from breath. You got away from being centered.
Mm-hmm.
Look what you're hanging around with. Look what you're, because like I said, I'm from the ghetto, so it's very easy for me. But do I want to use it as my excuse? Like, no, don't use that. Like, if you can, but all you're gonna just do is go back into those toxic karma, to that toxic cycles, and it's gonna come back. Whatever you're emanating, it's gonna return back. That's where like I know, because that's something that's been calling me, which I'm gonna look more into, which is the whole hermetic principles, polarities, cause and effect. Those are universal laws, as I'm understanding and finding, and what I've realized is like, no, man, we're here to share, we're here to help others, we're here to be a service to others, man. And the more you help and share what you have, the more you will be rewarded back. That's kind of like I just turned 40, by the way. I just turned 40, so I'm like,
Yeah.
if I start comparing myself to others, I'm like, why am I comparing myself to others? Like, people would love to be in the position that you are in. Yes, you might not have the financial system with you or the financial matrix figured out, but the more you focus on you, that's gonna come, because now your inner world is gonna start reflecting to the outer world. Because money, it will help, but it's not gonna make you happy. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
might buy happiness, but it's not gonna fill you. It's not gonna fill what's here, that's your whole defiant self-love, caring for yourself first. You come first. Stop pouring onto others. Stop sharing with people who don't give a fuck. Like, that's one big one I've learned. Stop sharing with people who don't care, who are just not listening to you. Because they're not ready yet. They're not gonna. So many people make fun of me. Like, dude, you still with your YouTube thing? It gets to you, but
Yeah.
it's like, that's when I realized, like, it gets to you. But I'm like, you know what? That's just their trauma. That's just their negative beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's just how they feel.
And almost testing your willpower, right? Because how confident are you in what you're doing? Are you going to let one little person's comment? And most of the time, they're not even upset that you're doing it. They're upset because they've made the agreement within themselves that they can't do it. So they're going to talk shit about you because you are doing it. And they're like, well, why does Johnny get to do it? Why can't I do that? But they are not even realizing that they made that choice, that they can't.
Yes.
And when they see you in your power, it's triggering because it's like, why does he get to do this? Why does he get to have this experience? It's like, guess what? You can have it too.
Especially that they started at the same level as you. You started from the same place as them. So how does he? That's the thing, and that's like that, and that's one of like I use that as fuel. I use that as like to transmit. Like I am on the right path. I am doing it because your number one haters, like I said, like there's people who. No matter what, they're going to hate. No matter what, people are going to hate. And the biggest ones are the ones who started off with you, like you're saying, like who grew up with you or your old friends, because they're like, why does he? Well, because first of all, you don't know what they've been through in their journey. Not just that, but to accept. You accepted a lot. Your flaws. You accepted your shadows. You're not projecting onto others. You're taking charge for your reality. And that's one thing that I have realized in my journey. It's what are you focusing on? I think you mentioned that in one of your, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the stuff you mentioned, sister, all you're doing is you're reinforming like, dude, I'm on the right path. This is it. Like, because you hear it, you speak of it, but it's like, what are you focusing on? Like literally, because that's what your mind is going to fixate in finding more of that. So if you're fixating the drama, if you're fixated on them, then that's all you're going to attract. So once you're able to heal those wounds, channel that energy or flip that eye back in and do that introspection. Ask questions. There's no such thing as bad questions, but as you get better at it, practice makes, not perfect, practice makes improvements. It's going to make improvements. And as you make these improvements, you only get better and better at recognizing your own, you're bringing awareness. You're bringing awareness to your traumas, and that's where the transformation is going to begin. That's where the whole alchemy starts. And it starts by taking action, sister. Like, and a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing is stuff that I have to listen to myself.
Yeah, which is exactly why you're saying it, because when you teach or when you speak, you're hearing yourself say it, and that's a whole another level of internalizing something, which is a lot of time what makes me laugh, because even when I do my reels, that is like literally the shit I am telling myself that day. Like, I don't share anything, I don't like suggest anything or offer anything that I haven't done myself. Never once have I ever told a client, a friend, no, I've never told anybody to try anything that I have not done myself. And I come from that place like, hey, you know what? I tried this and this worked for me, and I offer it, right? Like, try it out. See if it works for you. There's shit that I've tried that I didn't like, that didn't work for me, that didn't resonate in my body. But the stuff that does, I love to share it, because I'm like, this is where I'm at today. I'm literally telling myself, what conversation are you having with yourself today? Because sometimes my conversation is not expansive. Sometimes my conversation is, nobody fucking cares what you have to say. Nobody cares what you're going through. Nobody cares about this. Or why would people want to watch this? Why?
Inner critic.
I have that, and I get that, but I also own it, and then I question it, right? I'm like,
and
okay,
then you
why
transmute it. You transmute it. You are a fucking alchemist. Yes.
And that's the shift, right? And I don't, and then another thing is like, you can't compare yourself to someone. Like, this version of me now took years of work, like lots of work. Doesn't mean you can't do it? Absolutely not. Doesn't mean like maybe you'll get some shortcuts? Absolutely, because I've fucking been in the trenches. And that's why I share my story, because just a little nugget of something could just shift someone's perspective, right? And the biggest mindset shift for me, the biggest question that has helped me is how is this happening for me? And if I
Yes.
ask that, then it's like, fuck, I gotta deal with this asshole right now, or I'm like, gotta deal with this thing. Okay, how is this happening for me? Like, what is it teaching
Not
me?
to
It's
you,
teaching
not
me,
to you.
yeah,
It's happening for
for
you.
me.
Yes.
Yeah. So then it's, okay, is it patience? Is it compassion? Is it like standing my ground? Is it speaking my truth? Is it learning to be quiet? Is it learning to be still? Like, I can't fix everybody. I
Mhm.
can't fix anybody. You know, I can only heal and work on myself. But in healing and working on myself, that
You're
reflection back
gonna
will help
emanate.
other people, because then they'll either see it and be like, oh my gosh, I want to mirror that, or they're going to get triggered by it and be like, fuck her, fuck that, like, I'm a victim. You can be there too, right? But we all get that choice. Every single day you have a choice. How do you want to show up?
Yes. That you were mentioning that I think in one of your posts. How are you
Mm-hmm.
showing up for yourself? How are you speaking to yourself?
Yeah.
You know, because like you were mentioning earlier, you're able to recognize that inner critic, that negative self-talk or that negative you can't do it, but you're able to recognize it, bring awareness, and like you said earlier, make the choice to act differently or to because that's where the alchemy is happening is when you're actually like when you're feeling that, like I said, that doubt. As I was coming on, I was feeling doubt. You know, I was feeling, anxiety. I'm like, you know what, this is me. I'm excited. I'm not, this is not doubt. Like I had to psych myself
Yes.
out. Sister, I just got lost right now. But yes, man, it's like it's a blessing, sister, to be able to understand what's really partaking. And I've been in the same boat, which is like, but I've caught myself and realized that's all the ego. That's your ego wanting
Mm-hmm.
to know what's gonna happen, what's partaking. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to, and it's okay. You know, that's the ego's job.
Mm-hmm.
But if you operate from the ghost behind the shell, which is your higher self, because that's one thing that I've learned through Billy, which is my mentor, is the voice that we hear, it's our self speaking from
Mm-hmm.
us from a higher dimension. That is our self giving us guidance through our intuition. You're gonna get, and the more you align, the more in tune you are with yourself, you're gonna pick up these channels or these messages. Now, are you able to discern it? And not just discern it, but act on it. And a lot of us with ADHD or negative self-doubt or let that inner critic get to us, nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's the thing I've realized. Like, just you have to break through that fear. And the only way to break through that fear is with courage.
Yeah.
Courage plus fear equals confidence. My someone else had taught me that was a confidence equation.
Yeah.
You have to shift your perspective, because if you believe you can't do it, guess what? You can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do
Whether you
it
believe you
because
can, you
you
can't. You're
can't.
right.
You're
Yeah.
right. Like, you know what? You're right. I'm not gonna. That's when people start to like throw their Bible verses at me and this and that. I'm like, you know what, dude? I feel bad because I can only imagine your parents doing this to you. Like, and when I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just your parents, man. You know, or they're like, oh, they'll be like, oh, this is sorcery, because like
Yeah.
this is sorcery. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm like, sorcery, man. I'm like, I laugh at it. That's what I'm saying. Like, and that's the part is like I sometimes like that negative energy, or because I'm able to transmute it, or
Yep.
reflect it back, or my own, what is it? The trickster in me, because that's another one. Like, yeah, the trickster archetype is strong in me. I mirror back people, but once I'm able to like realize, like, you know what, dude? First is the biggest one, the four agreements with Don Miguel Ruiz. I
Love
forget
it.
one of them. Yeah,
Yep.
don't take things personal.
Mm-hmm.
Never assume. Always try your best. And what's the third one? What's the fourth one? I forget the fourth. Those were the very, very huge, because once you learn not to take things personal and realize that that's just your ego, that's your own programming, that has helped a lot. And don't
Yeah,
assume.
the Instagram.
I was on a good roll there. But sister, look, so, and I think, us taking these little steps, sister, taking these actions toward where our soul calls us, is gonna is just is we're changing the future ripple. We're sending out the intention, and I think we're doing the right thing, man. And it's just taking action. And I want to thank you once again, sister. And it's beautiful, man. You're beautiful. Like, believe me, you live in Arizona. I'm in Los Angeles. But you know what I mean. I wish I would have be able to do some ceremony with you, or maybe I will. Maybe I'll end up because I'm really into that stuff. But I don't trust a lot of it because it's hard to be vulnerable. Like for me, especially for me, after the pain, after what you've gone through, it's hard to be vulnerable with somebody. Because the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's a whole, that we could do a whole talk on vulnerability. I love talking about that because most people see vulnerability as a weakness, but being comfortable with your power and your vulnerability is true strength. That is the true strength, because it is hard as shit to be vulnerable. It is hard to speak your truth because of that fear, right? Or because of this shit that the Matrix has built, right? The belief systems that people have. It's like, oh, if you show yourself, you're going to be judged. If you show yourself, you're this, or you're selfish, or you're arrogant, or you're whatever. But it's like, those are all built to keep you down and keep you out of your power.
Yes.
But when you can be vulnerable and come from that place of like, this is who and what I really am, that is your fucking power. Like, that is your superpower. That is it, because that is your true soul expression. And that's where your voice comes from, is that unique soul frequency that you have. Your voice, your frequency is unique to you. No one else can speak the way you speak and talk the way you talk and feel the way you feel, like that. And that's what makes you beautiful.
Thank you, sister.
And that's what makes you, that's what makes you coming out and speaking so important, because that's your truth, and your truth is what the world needs right now. So,
and thank you, sister. Reminders, thank you.
If you shut yourself down, then I can't get your medicine.
Yes,
Whoever else needs your medicine can't get it. We all have medicine, and we all have a different way of administering it, right? If you want to look at it that way. Some of it's through artwork. Some of it's through music. Some of it's through architecture. Some of it's through whatever it is that lights you up, right? That's your medicine, and that's your beauty. And when you shut that voice down and you shut that truth down, you're starving the world of your beauty and your message and your medicine and what you were called here to do.
Yes, you're 100% right. And like I said, sister, thank you, man, for this opportunity, this chance. It's not that, like I said, this is one of many to come, sister.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to tell you, though, thanks you a lot for sharing what you do share. If you're not following sister here, please do. Ultimately, sister, at the end, you said it best. It's being your true, authentic self. Like, the more you share, the more you get in touch with that part of yourself, because that is actually the true you. Because as Billy says, when you're born, you're giving a race, a religion, and a false identity. And we grow up protecting that false identity, defending something that we don't even know who we are. And because of the mask we wear, like we were talking about earlier, the trauma that we actually have. Thank you. No, thank you. That's probably one of yours. She's probably one of yours. But
sister, yes. But
thank you guys as well for joining us as well. I appreciate you guys for joining us. And this is there's more to come, in other words.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I can already feel it, because even just, we've hit on so many things that it's like, oh, we could dive a little deeper into that. But that's what makes all of this so fun, is that it all can blossom and evolve and grow. And, there's little stories that you have, that I have, that will touch and shift different people. And that's what makes these kind of connections so beautiful. So thank you for asking me, because I was like, oh, I felt so cool.
I'm like, no, man. I'm like, when you said yes, I'm like, the blessing's mine, man. Little does she know the blessing's mine, but I have to keep the machismo up. But I recognize that. That's a difference. I recognize those little things, and I'm like, no, dude, she's just another beautiful earth angel who's gonna share with you, man. And I was blessed, sister, and I am. And thank you very, very much.
Yes, and thank you all for joining and listening, whether it's live or later on. Thank you so much. Yep, I'm here for it. And also too, like, if you're friends with Johnny or friends with myself, and there's something that you guys want to learn more about or dive into, shoot us a DM, and we'll get on here. And
because I know you do ceremonies, I know you do more DMs. I'm still working on that whole stepping into my own power, and that, sister, because my own. But I'm going to get there as well. And that's
power. Maybe your power is going to be transmission. So, you know what I mean? Like, because you asked, like, so something moved you to ask. And I feel like there's so much more conversation and so much here that can build. Like,
yes, man. Thank you.
we could do a challenge together and be like, hey, we're going to jump on live every day and jump
Yes.
on and do this.
Consistency.
There's so much that can come from it. And I feel like I love also the beauty of bringing a male and female together, because then it's like, then people can see what it is to also be a balanced female in her masculine
Divine,
and feminine,
yes.
and a balanced male in his feminine and masculine. Like, all these polarities, all these things, when they come together, it allows people to see that we can have these conversations and be in our truth and be in our vulnerability and still be a solid fucking person, right? So,
sister, man, you're hitting it. I'm telling you. And that's one of the biggest blessings that I have with you is you're very structured. You know what you're going with. I'm more like all over the place, but you're keeping me grounded. Your divine feminine is very strong, and it's helping me out, and I appreciate that, sister. Thank you.
Yep, I'm here for it. So, yeah, anytime you want to come do a live, let's do it. All right.
Much love. Okay, so we're talking. Yes.
All right.
Blessings of mine. Thank you, sister.
Bye.